What's up, everybody? Couch Mills here, coming at you with a brand new Valorant video. And in this video, we're going to be breaking down a Valorant ultimate tier list, talking about the most powerful ultimates in the game and the least powerful and everything you need to know to dominate with them. So let's not waste any more time and jump right into it. So let's start off with the S tier. And the S tier are the creme de la creme best ultimates in the game. In fact, they're so powerful that they can fundamentally change how you and your entire team play out a round, and it can make it so you can overcome things like numbers disadvantage or point control. There's just so much about these ultimates, and there's three in no particular order, starting off with number one, Viper's Pit. Viper's Pit, especially with your teammates being able to hide in it, is just freaking disgusting. If enemies have to come plant, they don't have enough time on your point and you pop Viper's Pit, they are just completely screwed trying to plant in it. There's just no way that they're going to be able to make it out of there alive. On top of that, you can control really strong areas of the map, like playing defense on split. You can easily take a site control without full clearing by popping a Viper's Pit, forcing enemies out or being able to easily kill them. There's a lot about Viper's Pit that's just freaking amazing, and it's why it's one of the best ultimates in the game right now. Now, another ultimate we got to talk about is Lockdown. Lockdown seems pretty obvious. It's guaranteed value, really amazing retake, can make it so your entire team sets up for a retake strategy or an execute strategy, clears out cubbies, and when properly guarded is just going to guarantee either kill enemies that don't leave or force them out. Phenomenal. Speaking of phenomenal, you got to go to the GameLeap website right now so that you can start to click heads phenomenally. Anyways, moving on back into the video, let's talk about the last S tier ultimate, which is Resurrect. Resurrect is just guaranteed value. You get another body. Numbers advantage is one of the most important things in this game, and being able to bring someone back up is just amazing. You can also do it for eco when you really need to for that tempo. You can use it to quickly actually refrag one of your allies and then resurrect them. So now all of a sudden, when you would be at parity, you're up a person and you can snowball from there. It really just also brings back all of the abilities and even an ultimate of a dead ally into the game, into play. There's a lot to love, and that's why it's in our S tier. Now, in A tier, these are 4 different ultimates, very powerful for a lot of different reasons. Now, top of the A tier, we got to talk about Hunter's Fury. Hunter's Fury is an ultimate that actually could be terrible in the wrong hands, but if you know how to look at your minimap, ping where you're trying to actually ult through, and clear giant areas where enemies are most likely lurking up using your game sense, you're going to do a ton of damage, and often you're going to be able to get multiple kills out of Hunter's Fury. It is really, really great, especially if enemies love to play default. They're not committing to sites. You have some inkling about where they are. You can like check one area with your recon. They're not there. Okay, let's go ult the other side and catch multiple enemies slack and trying to lurk up short or something like that. Really amazing. Now, the next one we got to talk about in A tier is Run It Back. Phoenix's ultimate, literally the best part of his kit. So damn powerful. Run It Back is just amazing. I mean, you're going to take sight. You could potentially get a kill. As long as you don't get your body snuck up on, it is just so damn good. Now, in A tier, we got to talk about Blade Storm. Blade Storm is an interesting one because it actually shares similarities to an ultimate in the F tier we're going to talk about a little bit later. But Blade Storm is something that, yeah, sure, you might get no value out of it. You might turn the corner, right click, and somehow whiff every goddamn knife from point blank range. Or you might just get insta headshotted. And yeah, it can be frustrating, but the amazing thing about it is for the economy, right? All you need is some armor and a couple of abilities that you may or may not use, and Blade Storm is like good to go. It can get a kill, it can get a pick, and you can get your teammates weapons. You can win a round on save, and you're gonna be able to like buy when your team buys, but then on some eco rounds, you're gonna be able to either like buy for an ally who could barely not buy, and then you can use knives. You can use knives just in an eco round trying to get some picks. There's a lot about this ultimate that just adds to the overall percentage of clutch rounds, where on paper you shouldn't win, but Blade Storm kind of pushes it over the edge. And then the last A tier ultimate we got to talk about is Seekers. Seekers is really good when you're in clutch scenarios. It's not that great, and I think people really underestimate Seekers when they just throw it just randomly. Like, they're going onto a site, they just throw it, and there's like a whole bunch of people there. The people are just going to shoot it. They're going to have crossfires, things like that. You really want to use Seekers a lot more when you don't know where enemies are and the numbers are dwindled down. Like, if you're in a 1v1 and you pop Seekers, you're like guaranteed to win that 1v1. If you're in like a 2v2, it's still phenomenal knowing that an enemy is lurking up behind you, knowing where the enemies are, getting that information when you have no idea. It could be an amazing thing where, yeah, you got a kill. Now all of a sudden it's possible to win this 1v2. Let's figure out where both of them are right now. Let's pop seekers. One seeker's gonna zone away the other person. I'm gonna know where they are. The other one I can follow and potentially try to make a play on another person. Get that kill. Now I get a 1v1. Now I can clutch up when it was like 1v3 to start with. Now, let's talk about the B tier. These are ultimates that are still amazing, but sometimes they just don't have the same level of impact as A tier ultimates, and their ceiling might be a little bit lower as well. We got to talk about Orbital Strike at the top. Orbital Strike is really good for post plant. It's actually really powerful for clearing out really powerful angles like, you know, hookah or things like that. But there's always that chance that enemies get away from it, and most of the time it's going to just do a lot of damage, especially if an enemy is ready, unless you nail them right in the center, the dead center, and you have that perfect information. It's going to be hard to guarantee value with this. So for that reason, it's in the B tier. Still phenomenal, still great. It's just not guaranteed value, and it doesn't have as high of a ceiling as some of these other ultimates we talked about. Speaking of which, we do gotta talk about Showstopper, where Showstopper is guaranteed damage. It is 100% guaranteed damage, but it is never guaranteed kills. That is the problem. You could pop out, you know, fly at an enemy, get insta headshotted. You could potentially shoot an enemy pretty close to them, and you do something like 140. And this happens way too often with Showstopper, where an enemy is like not full dead. They've taken so much goddamn damage, but they're not dead. And if they're not dead, you still have to clear them out, and you could die to other angles. Can be frustrating. Sure, Showstopper has these amazing moments where you could get like 3 kills, but it's important to evaluate ultimates not based on like the perfect scenario. It's based on the average scenario, and maybe if Showstopper did like more splash damage and was a more guaranteed kill, if you just got it like somewhat near someone, I think it would be higher up because you could always get a kill with it. But the way it is now, there's going to be some situations where you just get very little value, even if on average it gets a fair amount of value. Now, next in the B tier, we got to talk about Null CMD. This is KO's ultimate. This one's cool. There's really good pros about it, and there's a little bit of negatives about it. Let's talk about the negatives first. That one is when you pop it, enemies kind of know where you are. They know you're coming. That is a negative, definitely. They get a little bit of information about you as you're coming in. But the pros, there's so many to count. I mean, you can run in first, get killed. If your allies refrag you and take point control, you can get rezzed up and you're good to go. On top of that, there's a lot of characters that have really powerful utility, and you pop your ultimate, you run onto site, you run in first. You're gonna disable a lot of that and prevent the enemies from being able to use their abilities to really leverage a lot of different things. And especially when you're talking about things like Blade Storm getting completely shut off by your ultimate, it is pretty funny and it is very powerful. Last up in the B tier, we got to talk about Rolling Thunder, which could be a more powerful ultimate. Here's the only problem with it though. When activating, sometimes you can just turn the corner on someone who is freaking concussed with your ultimate and they still can headshot you. Rolling Thunder is also an ultimate that is just far better when you have coordination. And you're going to find a theme here in the C tier where ultimates, if they need coordination, they're going to be worse just in this tier list, because other ultimates, like let's think about something like Resurrect, right? Doesn't need any coordination at all. It's something that you can just do and get value straight up. Same thing with Hunter's Fury. No coordination needed. If you just use it and get, 1 to 2 kills, that is a ton of value just right there. And if we're talking about Lockdown and Viper's Pit, sure, there could be some amount of coordination, but if that coordination is there, you just win the entire round off the back of it. As opposed to Rolling Thunder, maybe you'll get a kill or two if you have that coordination, not the same thing. Now, let's talk about the C tier, and this is where things are going to get a little controversial, which is kind of funny, but, if you disagree with me, let me know in the comments down below. So, top of the C tier, we actually have Cosmic Divide. For the same reason that Rolling Thunder is kind of in B tier, Cosmic Divide is in C tier. It definitely is powerful. Having a wall that people can't hear or shoot through is amazing, but it just requires the right amount of coordination with your team. When to push through? Are you holding? How are you going to be contesting the spike? Are you going to be throwing like different utility there? Are you going to trust your teammates that they're actually hitting the place where the spike is planted so that you prevent the defuse? There's just a lot of moving parts here that may or may not work in ranked. In like pro play, it's going to work a lot better, but you need that coordination. And while this could be like an A tier or even an S tier doing a mock lockdown impression, it's not going to be the case a lot in ranked, in my personal opinion, and it's a lot harder to pull off than just a simple lockdown that does the same thing for a lot less. Now, speaking of which, neural theft is actually in the C tier, and this one's going to be really controversial, but I actually made this list with an Immortal Cypher player really kind of breaking it down with me, and he says the reasoning that neural theft is not that great, it's not all the way up to the A or the S tier, is because you sometimes get value with it. Sometimes it can be good. You can get a kill with it. You get that information where the enemies are, and then you can go make a play to counteract it. It's really good for like those frantic fights where you get a kill or your teammates get a kill and you activate it. You get to know where enemies are. You can catch off lurkers. You can catch off rotators. And then you can kind of proceed from there with a little bit more information about the general battlefield. But sometimes the enemies are playing default and they just rotate off. Sometimes it doesn't guarantee that an enemy is still going to be there after the fact. And it's also a little bit strange because you need to get that kill to get that info. It's an ultimate that requires you to go to a body within a certain amount of time, and it requires you to get first pick. So it's going to be an ultimate that is quite a bit worse when you're at a disadvantage. So like, let's take something like Resurrect, for example. You like are down people, you pop Resurrect, now you're at parity. Or Lockdown, you are down someone, but if you can retake site control where enemies planted, you can win with the numbers disadvantage. But with neural theft, if your teammates get picked, now you're in a 4v5, you just can't even use the ultimate. You can't possibly use it to turn an advantage. Maybe it can help you in a parity or even an advantage, but it can never be a turner of a team fight from, you know, that 4 to 5, which is definitely really important. Very powerful ultimate when used correctly, but it's not just one of the best by far, not even close. Now, the last thing that we're gonna talk about in the C tier is dimensional drift. Now, this ultimate's a little bit weird. Sometimes you're gonna get no value with it, but you can gather information, and if you're using something like a shorty and enemies are caught slacking, because of the whip out time, you can just, you know, just destroy an enemy, and it's really strong to get a free double pump and then teleport out of there. But dimensional drift is just lower on the impact scale than most A tier, S tier, even B tier. I mean, it's not guaranteed by any means. You can definitely make it work if you're crafty, but it's not going to be that high up on the list, unfortunately. Now, we do gotta talk about the F tier, and the F tier is kind of like the worst ultimates in the game, but it's really like fucking use your goddamn ult tier, which means just use them because they're not that big of a deal. You have no expectation that they're gonna get you any value, but they could get you a lot of value. And the top one of this is probably the most controversial in the entire video, and it's Empress. It's Reyna's ultimate. And the reason that Reyna's ultimate is in this tier is not because this ultimate is not great, because it is great. When you pop it, you get a kill, you're flying around the point, you could potentially get like 1 to 5 kills and just clutch up with this. But it's kind of like the mixed bag, right? How many times have you popped Empress, turned around the corner, and got insta-headshotted, right? Yeah, well, you had a rifle, you had all your abilities, you had armor, and now you just lost the rifle and the, you know, the armor and your ultimate. You lost all of that instantly. Now, compare that to Jet's Bladestorm, where you bought that armor, but you didn't buy a weapon. You just have the blades, and you're just using the blades. You get headshotted, you still got money in the bank for the next round. Empress is not that way. Empress is something that you could pop right before a fight starts, and you just kind of gotta hope it works out. You just got to use this ultimate. And this is why I just tell people to just think of Empress as part of your abilities that just comes up every couple of rounds, where you're just popping it and you're just using it. And it might get you a lot of value, it might get you no value at all, but a lot of times people don't even use this ultimate because they're trying to set up the perfect situation when there is never gonna be a perfect situation. In fact, Empress thrives the best when you are in an imperfect situation, when you're in a 1v3, because Empress is one of the few ultimates in the game that can let you win those, but it's gonna depend a lot on your mechanical skill. The ult is not gonna do it for you. It's going to, you know, maybe work out, maybe not. And yeah, it's not that bad of an ultimate. It's not a bad ultimate at all. It has some of the highest peaks in the entire game, but a lot of that's just gonna depend on you and your gunplay. So that is why it's in this tier. Now, the last ultimate in the video, and probably the worst ultimate, but still amazing if used correctly, From the Shadows. From the Shadows, Omen's teleport is good for a number of reasons. You can use it to put a lot of pressure on the enemy, keep them guessing, and even if we are not talking about the teleports that, you know, obviously are in your back line and your team goes and seeks them out and gets a free kill, not those, that's the low-ranking, terrible Omen teleports. I'm just talking about the strategic ones. Your teammates push in and you teleport and you take heaven, or you take a lurk angle and you potentially get a flank on the enemy. Those are fun and those are good, but just like with Empress, there's no guarantee. If you make something happen with this, that's amazing. But there's never going to be a guaranteed amount of value. Now, I will give you one exception with this, and it's teleporting off and planting. That really makes From the Shadows probably a B tier ult if you use it that way consistently. Now, that being said, it's not always gonna work out the way you think it's going to, especially if enemies are tracking the fact that you have this ultimate. They're gonna be anticipating this. They can leave a lurker behind and cut you off. And they can do that on purpose, where you teleport across, you know, to the other site, you start planting, and they got an enemy ready and waiting for you, and it's a lot easier to cut off than you think. But if you are primarily doing this strategy, I think that the ultimate's far better. But a majority of people are using From the Shadows for much more aggressive and proactive and creative means. And I think that that can be good, but it's gonna depend a lot on you, just like with Empress. So yeah, it's in the fucking use your ult tier. But definitely let me know if you disagree with anything I said in this video, and if you do, let me know. But go to the GameLeap website for more in-depth tips and tricks. Thank you so much for coming by. Hope you enjoyed the video. I love your faces, and I'll see you next time.